Ready.
I love it.
So welcome to Becoming Running. Today we have one of my oldest friends who is actually probably is the most decorated grip athlete in the United States, especially over the last 20 years. And I want to welcome Jed Johnson to the podcast.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you. Good to see
wow.
you guys.
Way to downplay the intro of Jed Johnson. Like you're not doing a good job of building up who Jed Johnson is.
All right, we'll start it out.
Well, first off, I'll tell you my recollection of meeting Jed was back in the Strongman Saturdays.
Yes.
On Desmond Street. And for all of you stalkers out there, Smitty no longer lives on Desmond Street. But I remember rolling in. I think that was the workout we did, the yoke press.
Yes.
And we did like stones and everything. And I was 15 years old, and I just remember Jed yelling at you because the grass was so long. We were trying to pull the sled around, and it looked like you
pulling through
the lawn was so bad. It was like at the point where you need a weed whacker before you mow it, like that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
and
that's true.
The intensity was high. Tempers were flaring, stones were being lifted. It was all around just a good glimpse into the relationship between Jed Johnson and Jim Smith.
Well, was that the first time you ever met OB too during like a Strongman Saturday? Because I think, did I ever meet you before that? I don't think so.
Well, the first workout was at Diamond, but Jed wasn't there, so I met Jed at the Strongman Saturday. But
so I don't remember that. I do see a big similarity between that grass and whatever the hell that is on your upper lip.
This is called masculinity,
right?
Okay.
Yeah,
that's called high levels of estrogen.
Anyway, I do remember training at Elmira Fitness with OB.
Yeah,
and
EFC, yeah,
and doing. I remember him doing. I think it was 500 deadlift the first time. I don't know how old you were. I have no idea what. Maybe 2006.
Yeah, I was probably in high school, right? I think I was in high school. We were just talking about that video.
We're actually going to play that as the intro to the podcast.
Yeah. The narration of that video is so good. Still to this day.
But, fighting, bickering, and trash talk was generally a big part of every weekend session.
So you said in the intro that you just got done with grip, and we haven't really had a grip expert on the podcast.
No, but we have had we do a lot of Q&A episodes, and every single one, we've archived at least one question a week on some type of grip thing, because we've always known we wanted to have you on at some point. So we could Rolodex the categories of all the grip questions we've gotten just because they're so frequent. So this will be a good episode.
And you train a lot of athletes too, so I know you get really creative with your grip. Why do you think a lot of strength programs leave grip out?
Well, they probably think they're doing grip, but it's actually like forearm work.
That's very interesting.
So they start doing like, stuff to build up their forearms, and then they might do some hangs off a bar, and it's foundational, like, the very basic hand training and forearm training, but there's just usually a big misunderstanding about how to train it in order to get the best results for what you're training for.
So if someone came to you and say, well, what's the difference between training grip for strength or training grip for size? Like, what kinds of things would you tell them? And are there different exercises that you would use?
Yeah, the loading is the biggest difference. So the amount of weight that's on the bar or whatever implement you're using is going to be probably a lot lighter for like a forearm development, because it's basically muscle building.
Right.
So a lot of people are going to do wrist curls and maybe reverse curls and things like that. And it's going to be like 10, 12, 15, maybe even 20 reps. And a lot of, I guess they're looking for time under tension, but that's not really the kind of thing that I've found that carries over to actual lifts in the gym. Like,
what is the type of grip training that carries over the best?
Well, what kind of trainee are we working with? Is it like a power lifter? Is it an athlete? Because that's going to be different depending on who you're working with.
Well, you work with a lot of athletes, so let's go with athletes for now.
Okay, so the majority of my athletes that I work with are wrestlers and football players. So almost all the grip training that I do with them is actually a modified pull-up. So I don't do anything that you would see me do for grip sport. I probably haven't done with them in over 5 years. The only thing would be some block weight training or some pinch work here and there, and it's usually just to mix it up and have fun. I have just about every implement you can think of that came from Rogue Fitness for pull-up modifications. So just yesterday, we did pull-ups on the globe, which is the big round thing that hangs off of a bar. And then I had them do hangs. And then we'll mix that up and we'll do the dog bone. So they'll do pull-ups first, and then in the next block, they do hangs. And it's flexed arm hangs. So what I'm looking for there is to develop the strength in like the holding and pulling of your opponent on a wrestling mat, or the tackling aspect of football, or wrapping the ball real hard in a, I don't know what you call it when there's a big like scrum on a football field, things along those lines. So it's like you could think of it as open hand training combined with monkey grip and arm flexion. So
what is monkey grip?
Okay, monkey grip is where you would put your thumb on the same side as your fingers on a lift. So it just if you did a thumbless deadlift and put your thumbs on the same side as the fingers, that's monkey grip.
Okay.
But also if with the globe, with the dog bone, when you're gripping, it's so big, you're not going to go like this on one of these things because your thumb will be like useless and it'll actually probably hurt. So what you do is you put your thumb on the same side of the fingers, and it's all monkey grip.
So what is the benefit of training grip with an open hand in comparison to obviously, like a narrow bar or a small diameter bar?
Well, if you look at a lot of athletics, that's how you grab. So, especially like a tight waist or gut wrench in wrestling, you're not going to try to pinch the guy. You're going to cup around. You think of it as cupping too. That's kind of an arm wrestling term. The grip in arm wrestling is kind of like this. And so your hand is in a cup position. We also do thick bar training, but it's like if it's not a need to do that, then I don't do it. So my guys, I've had them doing this stuff for so long, and I've had my cat's up here, and I've had a long, consistent group. The grip is not a limiting factor for them. So I don't keep adding that in because it's kind of a waste of time.
When you say if it's not a need, when would it be a need?
Like if I had a newer guy that came in, like a younger guy, right now I'm envisioning when we're talking my 5:30 a.m. class, which is like my hardcore, most serious, high performing athletes, and they're all high school athletes. So I also have a few younger wrestlers that are 10 to 12 years old. These guys are not advanced, and they haven't had as much time in the gym, so they do a wider variety of stuff. I still do the thing that we started doing when we first started doing grip in 2002 or whatever, where I just load up one end of a barbell and have them hold the end of the barbell.
Yeah.
So,
for everyone who doesn't know what he's talking about, it's basically you put a bar in the rack, probably about hip height or waist height, and you have two. Well, you can do it with one athlete, or you could have two athletes facing each other. But you basically load up the barbell and they grab the fat collar end of the bar. So you have a thick grip there. and not only a thick grip, but it rotates, right? And they lift it off the rack and face each other and hold it as long as they can.
That's exactly it.
Right.
And a lot of times, so I have my cage set up and it's kind of close to the wall, and it's tough to have one guy on each side. So what we'll do is we'll put the pins in there, but one side is lower. So the side that's higher, there's no guy there, and there's maybe one 45-pound plate to counterweight the bar, and then the guy comes over to this lower hand and picks up that end of the bar, and there might be a 45 and a 25 or a couple 25s. It depends on what the strength level is, and then they just pick it up, and the bar might clear that pin 2-3 inches, but I'll have them count that out in their head, 10 to 20 seconds. Another one that I use, so I also train baseball and softball players, and I found really good use out of something called a grappito. Have you guys seen that?
No. What is that?
A grappito is, if you can imagine like a sphere on one end, and then it's got a shaft coming out, and then on a torpedo how it has those flanges or those wings that kind of come out to direct it through the water or whatever. That's on the opposite end. So you're grabbing the sphere, and on the other end is these fins, and I have a bucket of sand, and I have them grab onto that and turn it each way. It also comes with a hole on one of the fins, and you can attach a rope to it, and then you can crank it on the end of a barbell like that.
Damn.
So I've had a couple pitchers, softball pitchers, and I have them do that on the end of the bar. So it's not this height, guys, but it's down lower by their hip, and I have them crank it like this, and it's kind of like how they would release a softball by their hip. Mm-hmm. So it works that way, and also in the bucket of sand works out great for developing full hand strength, and you can train all the fingers at the same time.
So back to that support. Sorry, Smitty. I got a question back one step on the support thing where you're holding the barbell.
Yeah.
What's like a criteria that you're looking for with an athlete? We talk a lot about how when you're training an athlete, a lot of times they're strong enough, right? Like if a football player comes in, they squat 500 pounds, we're not going to try to turn them into a powerlifter and think getting them to an 800 pound is somehow going to be more applicable to their sport. Is there some type of criteria? And if so, what is it that you're looking for where you're like, this guy's got enough grip strength, or you immediately know they need more?
Once they can do 3 plates on the end of the bar for like 10 to 20 seconds, I don't ever have them do that again.
Okay. 3 plates, that's a lot.
It ties up the cage. Right. It ties up the cage, so you can't do anything else in the cage, really. I mean, you can, but like I don't know. It just after a while they outgrow it. So
how do the athletes cheat that? They're probably resting the bar against their thigh, right, to stop the rotation, or they're kind of hiking up their hip.
Well, when I have to show them what a sleeper hold is.
You take
when they wake up from the blood being cut off to their carotid artery, then they understand not to do that anymore.
You know what I thought was fantastic is right when we started talking about grip, you brought in something so functional that not everybody thinks about. You said with your football players and your wrestlers, you were talking about some type of pull-up modification. Well, that's not only grip specific, but it's also using your grip with your entire body. Mm-hmm. Is that how you see is like a difference between training athletes and maybe someone that's doing grip sport where they're trying to bring up each aspect of grip? Is that something you're looking for with your athletes, trying to figure out how to tie in a grip specific device with something more functional to build their entire, strength profile?
Yeah, you get like, it's kind of a 2-for-1 on that one.
Yeah.
But I will say that anytime that there's a lift that's modified to be more intense on grip strength training, then we also do supplementary stuff in that workout so that they're getting good stimulus for their back and their shoulders and arms. So some of the kids can hold for 20 seconds in that clenched position. Others can only do like 5 seconds. So And either way, when they're doing that lift, it's still mostly the intensity is mostly focused on the grip, not as much on the back. And there's times a year where I want these guys to grow, so we're still going to do rows, we're still going to do pull downs, and we're still going to do curls. So that's not all the back and arm training that we do. It's just I stick that in the beginning because that's when they're freshest. So after we warm up, we get right into that, and then you can go and do your other like bodybuilding type back and arm stuff and not have to worry about it. And then you also don't see some kind of a decrease in strength. So I think one of the problems that grip guys get into is they turn all their lifts into grip lifts. And then what happens is their hands get stimulated, but then they don't build strength in their arms and their back. And that becomes a problem. You want to have really strong arms and strong back and shoulders from doing the pulling movements. So, like, I always encourage people to do extremely heavy pull downs. Like, when I do pull downs, usually what we do is 3 sets of pretty strict form, and then 3 sets of like not unsafe form, but throwing the weight. Mm-hmm. So it's a different type of stimulus. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But the last thing you want to do is turn everything into a grip lift, because then the percentage of weight that you could do normally, it just drops. Like it might drop 30 to 50% depending on what implement you're using. So let's say someone's doing barbell rows, bent over barbell rows. And they use like an axle or they put fat grips on the barbell, dude, they're either gonna go from doing 10 reps to like 2, or in order to get the 10 reps, they're gonna have to drop to like 50% of their 10 rep max. So I think that's a problem that they think, oh, I want to do grip and I want to build my hand strength, so I'm going to turn everything into grip lift, and then they totally shoot a hole in all of their strength training.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned 3 sets of not throwing the weight or maybe adding a little momentum to build up some heavier lifts with the pull downs, because we actually talked about this on a podcast a while back about how Olympic weightlifters actually turn their bodybuilding lifts with they utilize a lot more momentum, because their goal is to stimulate as many muscle fibers as possible and use their body as a single unit for their strength. So they want to get as much carryover from the bodybuilding aspect into their Olympic weightlifting, and they use that type of training as well.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think it's a good idea.
The thing I picked up from what you were just talking about was it's almost 2 ends of the pendulum, or 2 ends of the spectrum. You're using grip specific lifts, which limit the amount of weight you can use, but then you have on the other end of the spectrum bodybuilders who always use straps. So do you have any thoughts on that, where you want to get your grip stronger, and then you take, and that will build up your primary lifts, because you can grab the bar harder, you can bend the bar when you bench, or you can like really dial in a double overhand deadlift because your grip is stronger without having to use straps. But then bringing in the straps if you need it and you're doing more volume. Do you use straps in your program at all?
Like my own personal program, or with my lifters?
I don't think you use them with your lifters, right? Probably with your own personal program, right?
I actually use them with my lifters, but it depends on what it is. So if it's like shrugs, then I'm going to have them strap right up.
Okay.
Because I don't want their grip limiting their lifts on something like that. Also, if there's any type of a hand injury, then we'll use grips. In my own training, I use straps on like all my. Well, I'm doing conjugate now, so I'm going for a 1 rep max just about every single workout. So when it comes to deadlift, I'm tired of missing deadlifts because my grip was maybe off like a 2 degrees of an angle or something like that. Like I've done 545 double overhand, but like it would be like 1 week I would get it, and then like 2 or 3 weeks I wouldn't get it, either because I was shot or my grip was just slightly off on the bar, or maybe it was a little sweaty or something like that. So I just got sick of that. And I use straps on all my heavy deadlifts now because I'm focusing on the back strength. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, and you always pull double over, right?
I can't do the supinated grip.
Yeah.
I mean, I could with like 315, but I wouldn't even want to do that out of fear of straining something, and absolutely nothing heavy because I'm worried about tearing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's really smart. We always recommend double over for our guys as well. You did mention something that was very, I don't want it to slip away because it's so important. You mentioned being, your grip being kind of shot, or maybe you're feeling shot and your grip wasn't always there. Do you find that there's a big correlation between your ability to perform grip lifts and your current level of recovery? Like if you're shot, do your grip lifts go down, and does that affect everything else?
Oh, there's absolutely a correlation. There's absolutely a correlation. I've been going through probably like a 2-year bout of really poor sleep. And my sleep apnea is really bad right now. And from like May of last year until December, I couldn't sleep on my right side. I did something to my hip, and anytime I laid on my right side, like my whole leg would go cold and numb and tingly and stuff like that. So I had to like rehab it and roll it and stretch and all this stuff. So anyway, the point is when I do have a really bad night of sleep, then the next day, like I can still perform body wise, but forget it with the grip stuff. I'll generally have to change my workout or modify it somehow. Whether it's, I know I'm not going to be top end on my grippers. Grippers are easily the thing that's most affected by the poor sleep or lack of recovery because of the dynamic nature. The static stuff like thick bar and pinching, not nearly as much as the grippers.
I think you're so smart in how you train, and it's funny because all these other experts in the field, you mentioned Westside and Conjugate. Well, Louis says the hands are windows into the CNS, and I thought that was brilliant because you're saying that in the trenches and what you found through your own training your athletes, that if the body is kind of in a state of recovery, the grip is going to be limited. And what's funny is you just said the grippers. Well, a lot of people use that hand dynamometer.
Yeah, I was just going to actually ask you if you use any of that stuff for readiness.
Do you ever like test the grippers to say, oh, this is a good day for deads, or like how do you use any of that feedback type?
No, it'd be interesting to document some of that and see, like, look for some relationship. I don't actually own a dynamometer. There's a bunch of them out there, and I just never got into that when I started, and I suck on those, believe it or not. I've only ever bottomed one out like one time. Then that was when I injured my pec, and I had thoracic outlet syndrome for a while in 2012. So I did some rehab with it, and the first time I squeezed that thing, it was absolutely pathetic, like no joke. And I was like, this is bullshit. So I kept trying it every time I went. And one day I actually took chalk and I was able to bottom it out.
Oh my God.
That's the only time. Anytime I've been at a gathering or a competition and someone pulls one of those out, like I perform terribly on that.
And but you got to think too, what you have really big hands, right? So your grippers are probably your worst aspect of grip. I mean, even though your grippers are world class, but I'm just saying, as opposed to like pinch or thick bar, you're probably they're more natural for you. Well, basically what they do with the dynamometers is they basically have all their athletes hit it right when they walk in, and they record the reading, and then over the course of a few weeks you have an average for every guy. So basically when they come in and they don't hit that average, you know that, hey, this might be a day where they have to pull back a little bit.
I will say though, I have the Vald performance, like their digital assessment tools, and I have one, and the The factor that biases it is what workout you just performed. Obviously, like if you go and do a really grip intensive workout where you double overhand pulling 545, the next day, obviously you're going to be a little fried from that, but there's going to be a massive decrease in the output of your grip strength. And it might not be reflective of your readiness state, because like, so I have like the Aura ring, and I do some monitoring of my own, anecdotal evidence of this. And sometimes my readiness is pretty good, but my grip strength has dropped quite a bit just because I did a bunch of carries and some dead hangs and things like that. So there is a variable there, but I was curious about the same thing, because the window into the CNS, like the hand is such a unique aspect of training because it's so has fine motor control and gross motor control, and like there's so many variables of the hand that it's like I don't know, this is where it kind of gets muddy, I feel like, for a lot of people when you're talking about training it. And I know you talked a lot about the different types of grip training, and when I see athletes specifically with jiu-jitsu, this is where I'm thinking about grip strength. Obviously when you're training in the gi for sambo and judo and jiu-jitsu, so many people try to replicate the sport with their grip training. So like they'll do towel pull-ups, and they'll hang a gi from the pull-up bar, which I think is good in a lot of sense. But to me, what that would raise a concern of is like, it would be like a runner coming into the gym and only doing sagittal plane stuff, right? They're already running. They're getting a ton of sagittal plane work. To me, I want to see them come in and do things that complement it and support it. So we'll work adductors and abductors and do a lot of Cossack squats and get into the frontal plane and things like that. Is that how you approach your grip training? Can you talk a little bit about maybe the different types of grip training and how you would support or balance an athlete's grip training with their sport?
Yeah, sure. So you want to know about my grip training or how I do it with them?
Maybe a little both. I'm curious. I know maybe it would help if you're going to talk about your grip training. It would help to clarify what grip sport is, because I think a lot of people don't even know what that is. So
that's very possible. Very possible. So grip sport is it's a sport where you're testing grip strength over several different types of disciplines. And the disciplines come down to movements of the hand and also positions of the hand. So you have crushing, which is where you're moving over a distance. So the most common test of that is gripper closing, or you close a gripper down onto what's called a silver bullet and hold it. So that's crushing. Pinching is the main thumb test. So generally your thumb and finger oppose one another, and then there's some kind of implement that you pinch on, either with one hand or two hands, and you try to get as much weight as you can at the end of all of your attempts. Support is generally tested with thick bar. So thick bar usually means it's big enough that you can't touch your finger to your thumb to your fingers around the implement. So you end up with a space there. So it's open hand training. It's open hand support. Call it that. So that's the third main discipline of grip. True support strength, you'd be able to wrap your hand around, and the implement would be thin enough that just about everybody could do that. So true support would be deadlifting, gripping the bar on pull-ups, a farmer's hold or a farmer's carry, things along those lines. Then we have vertical support, which you get into an ulnar deviated position, and it would be like if you thought of a vertical bar or the horn on an anvil, trying to pick an anvil up that way. So you deviate your wrist in this angle, and then you reach down and you pick something up for max weight. Those are the four main things these days in grip sport.
And just to clarify for anyone not watching, the last one was like if you tilt your hand towards your pinky. Imagine, I guess, like picking up, like if a sledgehammer is laying on the ground with the handle pointed towards the ceiling, and you bend over and pick that up, that would be
with your thumb facing down.
Right. That would be an example of that, right?
Or even if you think of an office water bottle.
Yeah.
If you had it so that the spout was pointed up and you reached down and grabbed it around the neck of the spout, that would be vertical support.
Okay.
So support also just means that it's static. There's no real movement of the fingers. You're not going to squeeze your fingers through the implement over a distance. You're going to wrap around the implement and try to pick it up.
Okay.
There's also implements that test wrist strength. They're not as often used in competition these days, but there's different sledgehammer levering. There's something called a pickaxe. There's a sledge choke, things along these lines, and you grip this lever implement and on one end, and out at the other end, there's some kind of weight, whether it's the hammer head or there's weight added to the implement, and then you have to pick it up and try to keep it level without an. Usually, for a sledge, you would use a quarter that's on the head, or with the pickaxe, there's a shot ball that sits on the middle of the handle. You can't allow these things to tilt too much because that object will fall off.
Wow.
And those are like some of the most painful lifts. And I don't want to say they've been phased out, but a lot of people are kind of scared to do those. So I don't see those that much, but I've actually set a couple world records on those. So my wrists are pretty strong in that position. And then often in a grip contest, there will be a medley, which is just 10 to 20 to even 30 implements laying around, and you have to reach down and pick them up and either put them on a platform or lock them out, or just complete all these challenges in a time limit. So it's kind of a combination between like powerlifting and strongman. You're trying to lift as much as you can over a series of attempts. Similar to strongman, there's like a myriad of challenges that you could be up against. So you have to be ready for everything.
Well, I want to get back into how we could balance athletes' trainings, but before we do that, I am curious, how did you end up in specifically grip training? I know originally you were doing some powerlifting, some strongman, and I can see the similarities, but what was it that drew you to grip?
So we started out with like bodybuilding and then powerlifting and then Olympic lifting. And it was just like approaching all these things with a great deal of passion. And then this maniac, Rick Walker, starts talking about grip training on this Dr. Squat forum back in the day. Mm-hmm. And we had just signed up for a strongman contest. And I was like, well, it seems like this would be a good coupling, training for grip and strongman. And like the strongman was in August and the grip was in September. So we just trained for both of those at the same time. And then if I could have kept my back healthy, I would still be doing strongman to this day, probably. I actually really love strongman. It was probably a bigger passion of mine than grip was. But the lack of knowledge for like good, proper technique and not beating yourself into the ground, combined with sitting all the time at my office job when I worked in my office, like I was just beat up. And there was one time I came to work and I was like hunched over. I couldn't even stand up straight. I'm like, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. And that's when I decided to just stick with grip. And, during those years, we did strongman for 3 years. During those years, I didn't train a lot of grip, and I still did pretty well at the contests. Mm-hmm. Grippers and bending were like the two most exciting things about it. So I remember doing that a lot. But as far as the other aspects, a month or 6 weeks before the contest came up, I would start training that stuff again. But the strongman stuff was way more exciting. And I miss that stuff now. But
yeah. I can tell you why Jed got into grip is because he immediately was good at it. Yeah. I remember both him and I got the number one gripper from Iron Mind, and I couldn't close it, and Jed tried it and he couldn't close it. And then like his second attempt, he closed it. And then what we found over the course of starting exploring these different grip aspects, like he was really good at pinch and thick bar, and then we learned about like different hand sizes and all these things, but he was immediately at an elite level.
What's the highest gripper you've closed?
The
3.5?
best gripper I ever closed was I'm certified on Mash Monster number 4.
Holy,
which
are?
is yeah.
Oh my god. Oh, Mash Monster, but not COC.
No, not COC. I've never closed a 4 with any set.
But you've closed a 3.5 though, right?
I've closed a 3.5. Yes,
that's ridiculous.
In competition, and the Mash Monster 4 is like I would say the rating on the Mash Monster 4 is about 187 pounds or something like that. It's in the 180s.
Wow.
That's my best close. I missed the MM5, and then the sport kind of changed and it went more to silver bullet. So I focused on the silver bullet, and I held the record on that for a while as well.
So does that mean it doesn't have to touch? Is that basically?
Yeah, the handles don't have to touch. You squeeze it down to just about parallel, and you put this other implement inside between the handles, and you stand up and hold it. And at the bottom of a strap that's coming off that silver bullet implement is a 2.5 kilo disc.
Wow.
So I just trained that today because at Nationals in April in California, I have to do it with a 224 pound rated number 4.
Oh my god.
Jeez.
So in grip, we have a rating system where they basically wedge the gripper into this apparatus and then hang weight. So the gripper sits like this. So it's like a V on its side. And then weight is placed on top of the handle using a strap until the handles touch. So a number 4 gripper usually is like 205 pounds to 215 pounds. So this 4 that they're using is rated 224 pounds.
Wow. Oh my God.
So I was like, okay, that shouldn't be too bad. Well, I actually have 2 number 4 grippers that rate 224. They're both over 10 years old, and I can just get like 1 to 3 seconds. So
wow,
it's really tough. When I set the record, I think after that contest, I rated it and it was like 212.
That's insane.
So when you hear 212 and 224, that's only 12 pounds difference, but that is a huge difference in grippers. That's really a huge difference. So
what's like the 405 kind of litmus test for just average people, like a 2?
Like a 405 double overhand deadlift?
Well, no, I mean maybe like something that's pretty good, like nothing that's gonna knock your socks off, but something that you'd be like, this is a good goal for everyone to get to is like
so
a 2.
Not knowing how to set a gripper. If anybody closes a number 1, I'm really, really surprised. I used to take my number 1 with me to work and have people try it all the time, and there were only like 2 people that ever closed it.
You laugh in their face when they can't even.
Yeah, belly laugh. Like Ted DiBiase.
So I did have a question. You mentioned all these different aspects of grip sport, and there's so many varying ways you can implement grip. The one thing I wanted you just to talk on is you're so good at hand health, right? And you mentioned all the grip sport, and it seems like everything is flexion and crushing based. How important is extensor work to keeping the hand balanced?
You know, if you were to ask me that 20 years ago, I would have said, if you're not doing extensor work, you're crazy. 10 years ago, I would have said that you have to at least do it like every so often. These days, the last time I did extensor work, I don't even know when it was. I have sets of rubber bands scattered everywhere at the house. There's some here somewhere. They're at the table that I write down all the workouts on, and I'll do them every so often. But as far as like a concentrated workout, I almost never do it.
So let me ask you this: a lot of times, people who have been training many years, straight bar work, and a lot of grip stuff, they really start complaining about elbow pain. What are your best tips? Because when I often talk about it, I talk about, well, you have to balance the hand and you have to make sure you're doing some rotation stuff, and that keeps the elbow happy. What do you think? I'm sure that you have like your go-to exercises for elbow pain. So if we're talking about elbow pain and balance, like what's your go-to?
For lifters, it's usually reverse curls, like with an easy curl bar. So that is something that I still do. So that's more of an imbalance between like the way I look at it is if reverse curls is what you need, then you have some kind of an imbalance between your upper arm and lower arm. And by working the reverse curl, you're working the back of your forearm more, and that keeps it away for me. It really does. Now, my assumption is that most people that go to a gym on a regular basis could benefit from the reverse curls. For people who don't go to the gym, then yes, it is an extensor imbalance against your flexors. So when I've talked to people that work in stone quarries, hand intensive jobs like the meat factory, and even just like moms, those are the kinds of people that I've suggested rubber band work, extensor work, and that has helped 3-4 people that were just parents of people that I train at the gym.
Right.
So I think it's I think it has more to do with the individual and what they're currently doing. So the more dedicated gym trainee, usually the reverse curls is what they end up needing, and then someone that doesn't go to the gym, they've just got imbalanced hand health, lower arm health, and they need the direct extensor work.
What I found in complement to reverse curls is hammer curls really do a great job of balancing the elbow. Other things that I do are, we used to do a lot of sledgehammer levering. Well, sledgehammer rotations where you're progressively moving your hand further and further down the handle away from the head of the sledgehammer and doing rotations where your elbow's at 90 degrees, either in a half a curl or resting your forearm on a bench and doing rotations. Those are the type of exercises that really work for my guys.
And I'll say that the people that I work with online in my online coaching, a lot of them are straight up beginners, and I do have them do those. Actually, it's common to have them do a day where they do reverse curls, the sledgehammer rotations that you just mentioned, and the rubber band work.
Well, that's fantastic.
You guys are just starting out, a lot of them. So it's back in the day when we first started out, that was a very common thing for us to do. I think what I did was I was able to create enough balance there where it's not become a problem.
Yeah.
And I also haven't had a problem in a very, very long time. I think the last time I had an issue with my elbow area was 2013. And I actually fixed it that time by doing reverse striking on a speed bag. So I would just go and just like hundreds and hundreds of times do that motion where instead of hitting forward on the speed bag, I would hit backwards, and that took it away.
Yeah. One of the things that when we were training for the Murph, we do that, the Murph workout every Memorial Day. I was getting a lot of medial elbow pain, and I heard someone talking about bear crawling. And so we've talked about this on the podcast, but what I did was I would set a clock for 5 minutes, and we would do 5 minutes of walking on your hands. So you could do anything you want, really. You could crab bridge, you could bear crawl, you could plank, whatever, so long as you stayed on all fours. And it really was an insane forearm pump. But also I felt like my wrists and my hands got healthier in the same way that just getting out of your shoes and walking barefoot would help the dexterity of your feet.
That's
I felt like
cool.
Yeah, it was tremendous. And I've always dealt with wrist issues from
Such a great idea.
wrist surgeries and things like that. And my elbow pain just about immediately dissipated. So it's one of those things that this actually kind of goes back to my original question that we got away from, which is like, I guess, how do you think about training athletes when it comes to grip when they are in a grip intensive sport like jiu-jitsu? Mm-hmm. Are you going to immediately just go to the opposite end of the spectrum, or what does that look like?
No, well, I'll have them do like bar holds. I'll have them do like a rack pull and hold the bar, but I'll only have them do it for 10 seconds, like the 10 to 20 seconds. It depends. We mix it up. All right. So if the indicator or trigger is 10 seconds, then I don't want them holding longer than 10 seconds. I want them to take a break and come back to it and do like 5 or 10 more pounds on the bar. And then 20 seconds, it would be the same thing. If you hit 20 seconds, then that's enough. Set it down, come back and add more weight to the bar. And then we just switch it up. I don't really have a rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah.
I did want to add to, I wanted to make this comment that we're kind of, we grew up doing strongman and we're just like meatheads or whatever. So we chose a sledgehammer to do our rotations for the elbow. I wanted to mention another way that someone does it. Eric Cressy, instead of using the sledgehammer, which can be sort of like a brute force attack on the elbow, with his elite pitchers, what he'll do is he'll do those same rotations holding a dowel rod. And the dowel rod is rotated with a manual resistance from a partner, right? So I'll sit and I'll put my elbow at 90 degrees on a bench. I'll hold the dowel rod vertical and I'll push it into supination. And then a partner will push it in the supination, and then a partner will push it into pronation. And I'll resist that moment arm, if you will, or that torque at the elbow from the manual resistance from a partner. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's really good.
When you're dealing with, elite athletes who are making tens of millions a year, you might not want to throw in the sledgehammer, but for us, I'm just saying like a home gym guy or whatever.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you something very interesting. Back in the day, doing a lot of pinch work, doing a lot of gripper holds, doing a lot of thick bar stuff, all that stuff is so static. And what I remember you innovating way back in the day was block weights, which are just basically the end of a hex head dumbbell where you cut the handle off and you grab it and you hold it. That's a static movement for pinch grip strength. Well, back in the day, you actually started doing tosses hand to hand. And I thought that was very innovative because the way we thought about it was dynamically grabbing the block weight as fast and as hard as you can to decelerate it and catch it without dropping it. Do you still do that type of training away from, the heavy statics of grip sport, or maybe even the heavy statics of training an athlete? Do you still do maybe dynamic grip stuff?
So, in my training, no, it's mostly just the picks and reps and holds. But I forgot, you just mentioned something. I do have them transfer hand to hand block weights. So they'll pick it up with one hand and then they'll move it across their like in front of their waist to the other hand, and then they'll take it with their other hand and then they'll move it away and bring it back.
Right.
So it's not the like extremely dynamic stuff, but we do, everything is on a spectrum, right? It's like either really strictly static or somewhat dynamic, and it moves across, that spectrum. So that would be closer to that. But no, I haven't done anything like that in a while. The closest I've done to that is trying to midair transfer stuff. Right. So if you would think of taking like a 245s pinch and lifting it and then tossing it in the air and catching it with the other hand before it hits the ground.
Right.
That would be an example. Or even the inch dumbbell, transferring that midair like that. That's something I've done.
One of the other things we used to do, I remember, is pinch two 25-pound plates with the smooth side out, standing up with a two-hand pinch, grabbing the two 25-pound plates, and then walking our hands around the outside of both of those plates that were pinched. We used to call them around the worlds, but I remember that was a dynamic static pinch grip strength that we used to do.
That's still something that I'll put into an online client's routine if they don't have a lot of grip implements.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because that was my next question. If someone came to you and said, I have a home gym, what grip implements would you say are essential for them if they're trying to get forearm size and they're also trying to get, a bulletproof and really strong grip?
So obviously a barbell and an easy curl bar to get all of your forearm training in.
Okay.
And then I used to tell people to go buy the entire set of COC grippers, and I don't do that anymore. It's much better to just have a gripper you can warm up with, a working gripper, and something a little bit heavier. I think you need a thick bar implement of some sort. And around, I don't know, it's probably like, it's probably close to 14 years ago, I came out with something called a Napalm Nightmare, which is a rolling handle implement with 2 gripping spots on it. And you connect it to a loading pin, and then you swing it like a kettlebell. So the implement is just about 2.5 inches thick, and you can load it with however much weight, but usually you only need like 100 to 135 pounds added, and then you swing it like a kettlebell. Now it's not like like you would swing like a 24 kilo kettlebell. It's not boom, whipping your hips and it comes all the way up to your nipple height or anything like that. But it's dynamic and rolling, because I was trying to replicate the downward force of like a kettlebell snatch or the long cycle kettlebell work, because the guy that was beating me all the time, Andrew Derniat, came from kettlebells. And I did not like doing kettlebell training because it was always ripping my calluses off and giving me blisters. So I came up with that. And now it's one of the most common implements that we use in grip sport for max lifts, which it was never the intention to even do a max lift or have that in competition. But you need some kind of thick bar training implement. And the nice thing about the Napalm's Nightmare is that you can train both hands at the same time. So you don't have to do your set of 3 right-handed and a set of 3 left-handed. You can just do both at the same time. And then these days we also have pinch handles that go on there, so you can work pinch with that implement too.
Wow.
A lot of people, when they have plates at their gym, whether it's their home gym or the commercial gym they go to, these days those plates always have all the holes in it and stuff.
Yeah.
And they don't have a smooth side. So I encourage people to look on like Marketplace or Craigslist or someplace and try to find some plates with the smooth side on one side, so they can do some plate pinching as well.
What is your elevator pitch for a client or athlete that doesn't see the benefit of why they would need a stronger grip? Are you still selling it to them, but just in a different way?
Control, being able to control the bar path on bench press, being able to control the bar and hold it exactly where you want to on the squat. Plus, when your hands get stronger, you can do more reps and everything. So there's the potential to put on more muscle. So that's usually what I go to.
Have you noticed a connection? I know you've talked about radiation and the neurological benefit of training grip. Have you noticed a connection to the rotator cuff? I know we do a lot of rotator cuff rehab, and I know that I've observed this. I didn't make this up. It's something that I've read about. And it seems like there is a connection between your ability to produce force in your hand and the rotator cuff's ability to be online. Have you seen that as well?
Okay, so I don't have any like clear-cut experience with that. But the thing I do have experience with is elbow pain and posture. So a lot of times, how people, they bench too much, their pecs get tight and their upper back is weak, and then they end up all rounded, or they're always on the laptop, they're always on the computer, they've got forward head posture. A lot of times when people come to me with elbow pain, they often have really bad posture. So you guys would know better than me on what the involvement of the rotator cuff would be in posture. So I'm guessing there's probably a relationship between the posture and the rotator cuff and external rotation strength and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sure. And also,
I know Perry Nicholson used to talk a lot about referred pain. So he would say, like, if you had someone come in with wrist pain or medial elbow pain, to immediately address the position of the shoulder and how the scap hangs on the thoracic cage. So that is in line with that. I could see that for sure.
And honestly, you guys, I was going to mention this earlier and we got off topic. You when you guys were asking about the dynamometer and assessing like day-to-day conditioning, the thing that I look at is people's posture when they walk through the door. Like if they come in the door and they sit right down and they're slouching, I know right away that either they didn't sleep very well, or they had a really hard practice the day before, or they're down or something like that. And that's the indicator I use on whether they're going to be in top form that day.
Well, how do you manage that as the strength coach of your facility, where you're trying to get these guys in a training session, but they also have practice throughout the week? Like, how are you like adjusting the workouts, or how do you do it?
So when I switched my training over to conjugate method last year, I also switched over this 5:30 a.m. class, and both years when they were in season for wrestling, their like capacity for setting a 1-rep max was in the toilet.
Right.
So like I had at one point I had 6 people in this class, and they were all PRing up until about November, and then it was like hit or miss. So what I do is, instead of doing the 1-rep max, I just switch them over to a 3-rep heavy.
Yeah.
And just stimulate that day, because the last thing I want to do is have someone miss and get hurt in their season.
Sure.
So it's cool to be able to change those numbers. So they did 225 on the bench, and this week they did 230. That's always fun to get that whiteout out and change it on my document, but it's a lot more fun to watch them walk out healthy and not like with a pulled muscle. So, we just stimulate that day.
My last question is more of like from a programming standpoint. So let's say I'm programming for my athletes or Gen Pop. Am I thinking of implementing grip as its own circuit, or am I thinking there's going to be a grip intensive day? And if so, am I thinking I need them to be as fresh as possible? Or like you said, am I thinking about putting that at the end so that they don't fry their grip and then suffer on every other pulling movement?
So I use grip as active rest in my blocks. So generally the workouts are 3 blocks made up of 3 exercises. And in the first block, there is like the heaviest lift of the day. And one of the lifts that goes along in those blocks is going to be either grip, neck, rotator cuff, or core.
Oh, wow. That's sick.
Those are kind of like active rest, so they get that work in at that time.
When they're freshest early on.
Yeah. Or it could be in a later block, but like, the workout for tomorrow is squat. So after squat, they go to the neck machine, and that's their active rest. And then I forget what the third exercise is. It might actually be an arm lift, like a bicep or a tricep. And then the grip is in the second block, and we're going to do some bar holds.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It's almost like you're targeting multiple weakness, like typical weaknesses like calves or grip or rotator or some type of modality that's a rehab modality or prehab, and some type of weakness in each block as a complement to whatever the focus of that block is.
That's right. And I only have my baseball and football players do neck, but I have everybody do core every day. I have everybody do rotator cuff, which is generally some form of, don't think of it as rotator cuff. I don't want to over specify. It's more of a postural exercise.
Yeah.
So double external rotation, Cuban rotation, band lower trap, which that's what I call it. I don't know what it's actually called, but you would take a cord in each hand and you would pull it up behind your head, and it works the middle and lower trap.
Yeah.
T thumbs up, ITY, stuff like that.
Oh, fantastic.
When that's in the workout, everybody that comes to the gym that day is doing that workout. So all of the groups, regardless of expertise, training age, or experience, they're all going to do basically the same workout. But I'm not going to make my guy Gary, who's like 70, do neck training. It's just not going to happen. Instead, he's going to do something else that's going to work for him, because he does things like I don't know what you call it actually. It's kind of like ultra marathon, but walking. So he'll walk every day, like 6 or 7 days straight until he gets like 300 miles in these competitions. So,
Jeez.
so if it's neck, I'm going to a lot of times have him work on his hips in some way, whether it's rolling or stretching the hip or something like that. Because my whole thing with him from day one was if I can get like an inch or two on each of your strides, that's going to be so many fewer strides you're going to have to take across that 6-day, 7-day period.
So it's a general template, but you have individualized adaptations for certain athletes. Yeah.
I used to have a name for it, man, and I'm drawing a blank on what it is, but like it's their specific need, their weakness, whatever. You know, it's kind of it's a spot that is always present, but it gets filled differently depending on who the lifter is.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to individualize. Let's say we hop off this podcast, you open up Instagram and you're scrolling through your algorithm and you see a bunch of like influencers talking about grip. What makes you roll your eyes as just terrible grip information out there?
Oh my gosh. Man. It's
I mean, does your Android phone actually have social media?
Oh, why you got to call out his phone?
Well, I was talking to someone the other day, and they were complaining because on the game Watermelon, it's so hard to get a shaker. And I'm like, well, you have an iPhone, so you're using a different version, and that's the version that sucks with your new phone. By the way, not only am I the reigning United States champion in grip, I am also the all-time leader in both overall score in watermelon, as well as total number of watermelons.
What is watermelon?
If you don't know, dude, then I don't even want to talk to you anymore.
I thought you were gonna say I don't know. Wow, I don't know anything about it.
Like Candy Crush? What is this? Is
it's
this a new
like Candy Crush? It's better.
It's like it must be an Android thing.
Yeah, it's an Android thing.
Yeah,
I wouldn't understand. So you're scrolling. Sorry, it's off track.
Yeah, back to what makes you roll your eyes.
Yeah.
A few things. Bar hangs for time drive me absolutely insane. I think it's a total waste of time.
Why is that?
Because there's no loading. And it's endurance in something that endurance you're getting is good for like nobody except for like climbers.
No, yeah.
Ninja Warrior. Like, and how many people watching these videos are climbers and Ninja Warrior competitors? Like almost zero. The plate flipping drives me insane. I think that's such high risk and low reward. There's so many other things like we've already talked about in this episode that are more beneficial. I cannot stand. I absolutely abhor wrist roller with like a dowel rod and a string attached to it with weight at the end. I think that is just grinding your rotator cuff down to nothing and surgery waiting to happen 20 years down the road. I hated that when we had to do it in college playing baseball, and I will never like that. If anybody is interested in a wrist roller that's actually beneficial, it's you put a barbell in the cage and you roll something up and you have significant weight that you have to try very, very hard to roll it up off the ground. If it's anything besides that, then
is that just so that
bad use of time?
Is that like putting it in the rack? Is that just so it takes the pressure off your shoulders?
Exactly.
And actually, gotcha.
Yes. If you're doing a grip lift or a forearm lift, you should be working your grip and your forearms, not your shoulders.
That makes sense.
Drives me crazy. Those are the big three that really set me off.
Last question is, I don't know if you know this, but Smitty is a one stripe white belt now. So my question is, let's say we're back on Desmond Street and, some words start flying.
Yeah.
Who wins in a no holds barred fight between you and Smitty right now?
What goes down if we're at Desmond Street is the crowd shows up, the promos get cut, Smitty enters the cage, and I hightail it. Because there's a few things in this world I have absolutely no desire to do. That is hand-to-hand combat and arm wrestling and those 3 exercises.
And hurting the elderly.
Wow. Hurting the elderly.
All right. Well, then that...
I have tremendous respect for, jiu-jitsu and all the hand-to-hand combat stuff. I think it's fantastic. I like watching it. Don't know a damn thing about it. And I don't have any desire to do it, but I love working with people to help them, progress at it, especially in the grip aspect, because I think a lot of the stuff I've developed over the years can be very beneficial. And let's face it, when you line up with someone and they grab a hold of you and you feel like your bones are about to break, that's a tremendous mental advantage that you'd have over someone.
Absolutely.
So, I've told my wrestler guys to go out and just grab a wrist or an ankle and squeeze the living shit out of it and, send a message that way.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, there's a very distinct difference when you're rolling with someone that's, especially in the gi. So like the gi, the thing that you wear in jiu-jitsu is like, you might be a whole belt rank below someone, but if you're strong and you can really hold on, that really slows down someone's offense. And it might not get you the sub, but it's going to frustrate the person that you're rolling with, might wear them out, might just give you the slight advantage that you need and be the equalizer on the mat. So
I believe it for sure.
Yeah.
And there are videos of professional wrestling going on at Desmond Street that have been recorded.
Yes.
And most likely haven't seen the light of day. And
yeah.
I won all those battles.
I'm sure. I bet that I still would put my money on you, actually, just knowing it.
I was going to say, wow, you roll with me every week, and you're
why.
Down. Well, the funny thing I was going to say was after 30 to 40 seconds of Jed pummeling me in the face, I thought I could outlast him with endurance because he's talking about CPAP and sleep apnea.
I don't know. I think my recovery is pretty good. I think I have pretty good endurance, and I have one of those giant heavy bags that's filled with water, and I work out on that quite a bit. So,
oh wow,
yeah, I still think you got them.
Thinking about it mentally, I know I have the reach advantage.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Yep.
And if I could sidestep or somehow evade and get behind him and take his bad knee out, then I think that's another step. And then
you have a 2-to-1 knee ligament ratio.
That's right.
To Smitty. So
you have 2 good knees. I have 1 good knee.
The problem is, and this was evident the last time I tried to play basketball, is I am so afraid of hurting a finger that I can't play basketball anymore. So like it would be tough for me to reach out and try to grab somebody because I'd be afraid of hurting a finger and having to deal with that for 6 months in my training.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, let's just put it like this. The last time I rolled with Smitty earlier this week, the coach is going over the move. We all pair up. Smitty's drenched in sweat. I'm like, dude, we just got here.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
I'm like, dude, why are you winded?
Get out of here, you idiot.
He'd be all lubricated. He sweats baby oil.
So where can people find you, and where do you want us to send the listeners that want to learn more about grip?
I would normally say go to dieselcrew.com, but I got so tired of problems with that website that I took it down a few months ago, actually.
Wow.
So that site's not even up right now. Probably the best way to find me is through YouTube.
Okay.
You just search my name, or it's at Grip Strength. On Instagram, it's at either Jed Diesel or Jed.Diesel. I don't even remember.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, so that's a good way to hit me up with questions, that or Facebook. Or just
you not only have like consulting services, but you also have a very wide variety of grip specific programs, like how to get better at grippers, how to get better at pinch. Is there one that you're working on right now that is there anything in the pipeline?
I wish it was one that I'm working on right now, but unfortunately I can't stay focused on something long enough to actually complete anything. So I have about 3 or 4 grip specific workouts that I have started. I have 2 different ebooks that I have started, and I have an online DVD on deadlift grip that is like done, ready to go. I just have to set up the back end to get it completed. But
awesome.
If anyone's interested in checking out the products that I have, and I have not only grip sport related products and feat of strength products, but also sport specific grip development products at dieselcrew.com/store/shop.
Okay.
So don't ask me why it's /store/shop. That old web guy set it up like that, and I don't know how to change it. So
that's up, but the main page is down.
Correct. The blog is down. It's just, disappeared, hidden, whatever you want to call it.
Got it.
Jeffrey Epstein, whatever. So
awesome. Well, Jed, this was awesome. I'm happy to have you on finally and satisfy the listeners' demands at this point of covering some grip finally. So you make a lot of people out there happy.
Cool. Well, I do have a question for you guys, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Your business cards these days, what color are they? Are they bone?
Do
they have a watermark?
They have a watermark, yes. If you don't know what he's referring to, it's American Psycho, Christian Bale.
Okay.
The business card scene.
I knew there would be. I'm trying to reference. I'm like, I know there's a joke here. I just can't find it.
Well,
I haven't seen it.
Smitty texted me the other day. This is like the first movie I ever watched with Smitty as American.
Wow.
And he says, "Can you do a podcast tomorrow or whatever?" And I said, "What's the topic of discussion?" He's like, "What do you mean?" I go, Is it Paul Allen?" He goes, "Who's Paul Allen?" I'm like,
I didn't catch the reference. So
gotcha.
Paul Allen is the guy that Christian Bale killed in yes.
You guys have seen a lot of movies.
We've seen a lot of movies together, yes. But that was one of our favorites just because the guy was insane, and the whole thing at the end was, did it actually happen? Did all the murdering and all these things, did it actually happen, or was it in his mind?
Oh, what's that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio? The Shutter Island.
Yeah.
Shutter Island. Oh, the Inception. I guess there's multiple movies with him in
Shutter Island's nasty. Yeah.
Shutter Island. Have you seen that one?
I have not seen that one.
You got to watch that
out.
That's like one of those that'll get you thinking.
You guys watch like Reacher? You guys watch Reacher?
I watched one episode. I got to go back. I've seen the first episode like 3 times because I always turn it on like when I'm working out.
Shirtless?
yeah, but
I don't know who the actor is, but he's got great genetics. Oh my gosh,
Alan Richardson.
So
yeah, he was in a bunch of like comedy movies.
He's probably on protein.
Yeah, exactly.
He looks like he's got muscle bellies like John Cena.
Yeah.
In the arms.
Well, what was John Cena's wrestling name before he went to WWE? You don't know that.
I do know that.
What is it?
The Prototype.
Oh, okay.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, I have a tape. I have a VHS tape where he is in wrestling school at XPW.
He goes to the supermarket, gets a ton of
buys all the chicken. It's like an entire cart of chicken and beef and stuff like that. Yeah, he went to wrestling school with like Samoa Joe. Yeah,
he just came out saying he was a lifetime natty. Do you believe that?
That's an interesting topic. Like, I don't ever throw shade
at
anybody because I get told all the time on YouTube that I'm on stuff, and I haven't even taken protein or creatine in like the last 2.5-3 years.
Yeah.
So, in 2022, I was extremely dedicated doing cardio really routinely and stuff, and I was in damn good shape, and I was hearing that. And, I see some of the people, like not Liver King, but like some of the people are like,
wait a minute, are you
jumping on the steroid bandwagon and throwing insults like that? And I'm like, man,
he's on the verge though. I feel like it's hard to believe. How old is he? And he's like, he's not 50.
He's mid 40s at least.
But
he's like my age.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
I'm 45.
Holy dude, you're old, bro.
I'll tell you what, I remember. Man, I feel good though. After really taking a look at training and like, you know, if something hurts, I do not test that body part. Like, I won't do it.
You've been in the gym for 30 years.
It's not hard to stay injury free if you really pay attention to stuff.
Yeah. To let the listeners know, Jed Johnson, when he was 15, he was 215 pounds, 6'2". He was a specimen, bro. Specimen.
Yeah,
so
I was 6'2" when I was 12.
It doesn't surprise me that people thought you were on steroids or think you're on steroids just because you're a big dude. So
yeah, I try to take it as a compliment, but it is annoying that people go there all the time. But when you consider like so many people that are out there in the public are most likely on performance enhancers, then you see why they say that.
Right.
But
I remember hearing like one giveaway was like capped delts.
Yeah.
Like what's physiological, like the ceiling of what's physiologically possible is like not super rounded delts. And and I feel like that you can kind of tell, you know what I mean? But
capped veiny delts.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you know, I'm
maybe Bobby's on it. Yeah.
Shoulder shoulders.
Well, and like I remember marveling at Bill Goldberg's traps back in the day.
Yeah.
And thinking, man, I want to have traps like that. And do you know how many years I trained my traps obsessively trying to get traps like that?
Yeah.
And like Paul Carter says that shrugs don't even work the traps right to really build them up. Like so much time wasted.
Yeah.
So
what does he say for traps? Like a prone raise, front raise or something?
More like a forward leaning shrug.
Right.
Or even like
what do they call that? A Kelso shrug?
You know, I'm not sure if I know what a Kelso shrug is.
I think that's what it is. You lay kind of 45 on a bench, face down, and you use a barbell and you shrug straight up to the ceiling. Yeah, that sounds
about right. That and just like a high body angle row.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Deadlifts, cleans.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. The trap's attached to the shoulder blade and it's moving the shoulder blade through that plane when you're doing that exercise. So,
the thing about the Kelso shrug too is if you're prone, maybe 45 degree, face down on the bench, and you have a barbell in your hand, that's almost like the first pull position of Olympic weightlifting. If you look at these weightlifters, that's their starting position, but they all have massive traps because they're in that body angle and they're pulling
fast
straight
twitch.
up.
Yeah. Plus all like just all the length and position training, you know what I mean? Like with the cleans and all the heavy high pulls they do, stuff like that. Wide grip too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Well,
this is almost we doubled the length of the podcast.
Again, Jed, thanks so much. If you have any other places that you think of, I'll put it in the show notes. If you have any products, I'll link to it. But again, I think this will go over really well just based off of the demand of talking about grip. And we've basically talked about it 0% up until now. We're 2 years in. So this is an awesome episode.
Yeah, well, I had a lot of fun, guys. If you want to do another one sometime, talk about something else or like different grip stuff, let me know. Or someone cancels out on you and you need someone in a pinch, just let me know.
You're more than a backup, Jed.
That's right. And maybe next time we'll get you in studio, which is always fun.
Yeah, with a little more time and we can plan it out.
That was my fault.
I'm not. It's okay. I can get up there.
All right, buddy.
We'll get some donuts in person. This guy thinks this guy's not to draw this out any longer.
So wait, before you throw this insult. So first I sweat the first 3 minutes in the jits.
Yeah.
Profusely.
And this guy is telling me he can eat a dozen gourmet donuts.
I can eat a dozen donuts. Come on.
A dozen Krispy Kremes are a lot different than a dozen gourmets, but that'll be for
Jed, are you going to deny my eating ability?
No. In fact, I'm going to tell a story right now. You know how like you hold a donut and you take a bite out of it, and one bite is maybe 1/8 of the donut.
That sounds about right.
Smitty takes his first bite. All that's left is everybody else's first bite. I don't know how he's able to curve his teeth and like invert, but he makes it happen. And that's what it's all about. It's about making it happen.
That's right.
That is a good point. But we'll save that for the second round of podcasting.
Thanks for being on, Jed. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Good seeing you guys.
Absolutely.